Outlet Liquor is your place to buy a case. Stock up and save when you shop the lowest prices available every day at Outlet Liquor. You never have to wait for a sale. The more you buy, the more you save. Only at Outlet Liquor.
What's your outlet?
Welcome, everybody, to episode 127 of Two Goalies, One Mic. I am Duane Stanley, joined by my co-host, Connor Hurley. Hurls, how are you doing?
I'm good. I just tweeted it out, but I think the concept of Jack Eichel winning a Conn Smythe is like very, very tangible. And I think we all need to mentally prepare ourselves for that possibility. As you've said before.
Stanley Cup, right?
Stanley Cup and Conn Smythe. Probably.
I personally think Marchessault's ahead of him right now.
That's what I'm saying. Like, he's ahead of him, but like, let's say he gets a hat trick in Game 5 and they win. Like, it's not out of the question. No. I think we all need to prepare for our literal worst nightmare, and it's something that at least needs to be discussed, and all of us just need to prepare for it. So I guess we'll see what happens. But yeah, this is not good if you're a Senators.
It's not good if you're somebody who's hate tweeted Jack Eichel for 365 days.
It's a pretty tough scene. I think a lot more so for you than it is for me, but I think we're right in the same boat there. I think
thankfully I haven't dealt with much. Nobody's burned me too much yet.
And you might not, because like Vegas,
that's about it.
Vegas, they have fans, but they're not as like intense as other fan bases, and they're
not as in touch as we
and they're not as petty. I don't think they don't have
that reason to be petty yet. They have no reason to be petty yet.
Exactly. This is their sixth year of existence. It's not like they've had an opportunity, and they've been good every year.
Meanwhile, we've been around for 52 years, and we've been in the finals twice. So they did.
Both of those appearances were wonderful, though.
Yeah, fantastic. But yeah, listen. There's a lot to kind of digest and unfold here. But we'll kick it right off with, obviously, we're going into Game 5 tomorrow night. That's why we're a day early, because obviously it wouldn't make that much sense for us to record tomorrow at 8 p.m. during the game. But, I mean, it's, as you said, to kick off the show, it is something that we really might have to learn to accept, that Jack Eichel may, at the very least, win a Stanley Cup. In only his second season with the Vegas Golden Knights. And this is like Ryan O'Reilly times 5 for me, because
15 like times.
Yeah, it wouldn't be as bad. It wouldn't be as bad as if the ending wasn't as bad, and to what you said earlier, as petty as it was earlier. I think that had he never done that interview with Elliot Friedman, had he never said the things he said about the fans, I'd be much more gracious, I guess. Or
it wouldn't even be a thing.
Graceful. It wouldn't be a thing. Exactly.
No, I think he was like largely beloved for his entire time as a Sabre.
Yeah.
Like he was incredible. He brought us the most amount of joy we had experienced at that point in 7-8 years. And it was the one thing that we had all hoped for, obviously, and it made us relevant again, brought us back into the national discussion. And then it was just an absolute train wreck. Shout out Trainwreck Sports on the way out. It was horrible, and it couldn't have gone worse. That as soon as I kind of missed the Elliot Friedman one. I've gone back and listened to it previously, but as soon as that game ended, and he said the comments about the building being the loudest it's ever been, and Buffalo this, Buffalo that. He's dead to me. He'll always be dead to me. And I think he knows that because he was immature and petty. And It was uncalled for. So
I would hope at his next game in Buffalo. I mean, he had a chance to
he scored a hat trick and he was looking at the fans and doing his classic celebration.
I don't think he's ever going to, walk it back.
That's who he is though. Like he can at this point, right?
Yeah.
He's a villain.
I just I would love to sit here and think that at some point down the line, a bridge can be rebuilt between Jack Eichel and this city where, it's not a fuck you, Jack, every time he's in the building.
Honestly, at this point, I think he relishes being the heel. I think he relishes the fact that this didn't go exactly the way he wanted to. And maybe he thinks he's closer to McDavid than some people are. And maybe he thinks that he's proving it this postseason. He's not. He's good. He's a top 15 player in the league when healthy, but he's never going to be Connor McDavid. And I think he's been spurned from the beginning for that. Their careers are going to be linked forever. And he's going to be known as the 1C, 1D to likely the second best player in the history of the NHL. So it is what it is. But like you said, him winning a Stanley Cup, which he's likely going to do, is really, really tough. It's really tough. And are you there? I think you're freezing up. Or is that me? I think it could be me. Either way, I can carry this at least for a second. Yeah, it's worst case scenario. It's about as bad as you could possibly imagine if you're a Sabres fan. I guess you're back?
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Sorry for the technical difficulties, everybody. Out of nowhere, I just got some thing in front of me. It says, okay to leave site. I said no, and it still took me away. So
I think it's your computer hearing us talk about Jack Eichel so much.
Yeah, that might be it.
It's so stressed and strung out that it's just I can't do this anymore. It's kind of how I feel.
Yeah.
I didn't watch on Saturday. I was playing golf and actually played the best round of golf of my life.
What'd you hit?
It was an 84, but it was on a really hard course during a tournament that I think 83 people played in, and I came in second. So
how much does it cost to play at that course?
Well, it's a public course.
Okay.
I'm in a tournament club. So I think, on a normal, it's 55, 60, but it's the best public course in LA. So it's not incredibly nice, but it's very challenging. They held the US Open there in 1922. Either way, I was doing that and enjoying myself instead of watching the game on Saturday. But I just went back and watched the highlights, and it's pretty apparent that Vegas is the better team. They're deeper.
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah, they're deeper. They're healthier. Obviously, we can talk about Tkachuk, how he's not been the same guy this series.
He didn't take a single shot in that game.
I know. It's really unfortunate.
He didn't attempt a shot.
I bet on him to get a point, and unfortunately, that didn't happen.
I think if 100% healthy Matthew Tkachuk, that game might end up tied at the end.
The series is probably tied. I think 100% healthy, and also, who knows if Bob is 100% healthy? He doesn't look like the same goalie as he did in the first three series.
No.
So everything is lining up. Everything's coming up aces for Vegas. I hate to use a casino pun, but 7-7-7. Aside from game 3, where obviously Florida was desperate and they knew they needed to win, they should have played that way on Saturday, because you're 3-1 now, going back to one of the best home ice environments, home ice advantages in the league. And it's funny to say it's a must win, because obviously it is. But I don't know how they go in there and get that done. I really don't. If they do, I don't think it's a miracle, but it's an incredible accomplishment, and it obviously changes the trajectory of what could happen. Because if you get it back to Florida, game 6, in your home barn, coming off that momentum, that's a very winnable game. And then, as we know, most famous words in sports, anything can happen game 7.
It's true. I think that Florida is a good enough of a hockey team to come back from this. They'll really kind of depend. I know Anthony Duclair was hurt on Saturday. He has sustained an injury. They just said today that he will be back for game 5. Obviously, Matthew Tkachuk is clearly still hurt. Obviously, he, had a, memorable moment with 2 minutes remaining in game 4 where he was able to score and tie that game and send it to overtime. One thing I do want to discuss too, and I tweeted it out, and not that it's the reason why Vegas is winning, but can we just talk about the officiating for a second and how terrible it's been? Even on both sides?
In favor of Vegas.
It's definitely been in favor of Vegas.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that as a guy who wants to see
Florida
win.
You can look at it objectively. Yeah.
But I mean, okay, let's say that penalty at the end of the third period in game 4, for instance. He tripped over himself.
Yeah.
Like, even if that was a slight trip, how do you call that at the end of the third period in the Stanley Cup Finals in a tie game?
Yeah.
You can't justify that.
No, game 3. Game 3 is what you're talking about.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Game 3. I apologize.
It was horrible. I even said, like, somehow Gary Bettman got 4 guys on the Vegas payroll to be the refs in this series. Like, it's insane.
Nuts.
I mean, obviously, like, that's a hockey play that happens very quickly, and we can all go back and look in slow motion. But that wasn't the only call of that game that went Vegas's way.
No.
Very, very blatant. And I'm not someone to sit here and say, oh, this is rigged. Gary Bettman wants the Golden Knights to win because they're an expansion team. It's a bigger market, better for the league fan base. I don't think Gary Bettman gives a shit. No. I really don't. He's past the point of marketing this league to the point where, like, he doesn't care who wins. It's not going to help him that much either way. I just think that for whatever reason, Vegas has gotten more calls. And that's unfortunate because, like, it eventually should even out over the course of a series.
And it hasn't.
And it's really unfortunate because, obviously, like we've said, like, Florida is kind of up against it right now. They're without their best player at full health. And it's unfortunate. It was a clean hit and how he got hurt.
It was, for sure.
And it was a clear response to what happened, what he did to Jack Eichel in game 2. So what goes around comes around, and there is a self-policing system in hockey. But yeah, like you said, like it should be a lot more even than it is, and it's really frustrating that it's not.
Mm-hmm. And you kind of look at previewing this game tomorrow. Do you need Bob to steal you one?
I think you do.
Can they win without Matthew Tkachuk?
I mean, I think they can. I think they need Bob way more than they need Tkachuk.
Yeah, because they need Bob to steal him one here.
Exactly. Like, and that's kind of what he was doing in the first 3 rounds. And obviously Tkachuk was setting the world on fire. But they can make up for the fact that Tkachuk's not at full health. As long as he's out there and maybe a bit of an agitator and still, like, making positive hockey plays, they have a good enough team around him that they can make up for that. I think they have goal scorers. Obviously, Montour has been incredible. Barkov, obviously, is heating up a little bit. They need Duclair back. They need Reinhart and Bennett to figure something out. But they have the team. I honestly don't think Vegas is, like, head and shoulders better. Like, they're much deeper and they're much healthier right now, and they're getting production from their top guys at a much higher clip. But as we've discussed many times in the playoffs, like, you need your goalie to steal you a game, especially when your team's tired, hurt, and at a disadvantage, as they will be on the road.
Agreed.
Like, Vegas wants to get it done tomorrow night in Vegas. They saw the Capitals in their first season, no less, but it probably still hurts, at least for the 6 guys that are on the team. They saw the Capitals win on their home ice. And they saw Ovechkin parade the Stanley Cup through the Bellagio and set that city on fire for 2 days before drinking the entire summer in 2018.
The summer of Ovi.
Yeah, they still remember that. I guarantee you they do. And you see it from Marchessault. You see it from William Karlsson. You see it from Shea Theodore. These guys started this franchise, and they sure as hell do not want to go back to Florida and win it in Florida. I would almost argue that they would want to win it in Vegas no matter what. Obviously, they're not going to say that because they just want to win it. They can bring it back. But, like, they want to win on home ice. And tomorrow is obviously going to be their best opportunity. So, yeah, Bob's got to stand on his head. They're going to get outshot probably by 5 or 10. They're going to come out strong, especially in the first period. And he's got to be the guy he was in the Carolina Hurricane series. He's got to have that 1.5, 930, 940 save percentage. He needs to play the best game of his life. And unfortunately, given what we've seen thus far this series, I'm not sure if he's capable of that right now. He looks tired. He doesn't look like the guy that was the best goalie in the league for 3 straight series. So I'm not optimistic. I'm not optimistic about it. And especially if Tkachuk is not 100%, I'm pretty confident it's going to be a 2-3 goal victory.
Have they given any explanation about the end of the shenanigans at the end of the game?
I was just trying to look into it, to be honest.
Pietrangelo leaving the box on his own accord. Like, that's literally in the rules. You can't do that to join a fight. Well, it wasn't a fight, but close enough.
Yeah.
That's an automatic suspension. Obviously, Tkachuk would have some stuff to answer for. There was something that happened to Tkachuk, though, to kind of triggered that all off. Either in that scrum, right before that scrum, or he got literally cross-checked right in the back.
Yeah, you would know better than I. I was just trying to catch up on that. But
I forget who it was. He was literally cross-checked from behind. Like, he was just in and around the net. It happened right in front of the referee. And Tkachuk looked up at him. And he's just like, you're not going to call that. And I don't think it was at the very end of the game. I think it was a little bit earlier on, like maybe with like a minute left. I think it was like with a minute left. He was who cross-checked him? I might have been Pietrangelo, actually. I think it was Pietrangelo.
And that's why he was in the box?
Yeah, I think no, Pietrangelo was in the box because he threw the puck over the glass with 11 seconds left. But I think it was Pietrangelo that hit him, cross-checked him like right in front of the net. He was nowhere near the puck, and crossed him in the back and took him to the ice in front of the ref. And that obviously what happened at the end of the game between him and Pietrangelo, that was a direct result from what happened with a minute left.
For sure.
But like that right there, like for instance, like how do you let that go? Like how does that not get called?
Yeah.
Like it's not like it was behind the play. It was right in front of the official. Right in front of him.
That's the thing. Like, I feel like when they go down this road of not calling things, like it gets to a dangerous point where you're going to be a hypocrite if you call one thing and not the other. You know, like there needs to be more than just self-policing of these guys. Like, I think the Tkachuk hit and the response and everything else, like that's all clean. But if you get to the point where you're going to have these massive scrums, you're going to have these guys taking cheap shots, it's not only bad officiating, but it's dangerous. Like these guys are going to attack each other.
It'll open up a can of worms, man.
Like the adrenaline and the emotion of this series, everything these two teams have gone through leading up to this, the journey Florida's been on, they're going to be pissed tomorrow night. The fact that they're even in this situation, like it can go down a slippery slope really, really quickly.
I mean,
and somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody's going to get irreparably harmed.
Me and you both play men's league. It happens every freaking weekend. Some guys being a cock and just hasn't put the yearbook away. Wants to still play like a scouts in the stands. And if refs don't nip those things in the bud, it gets out of hand quick.
Yeah, and it's honestly insane, like how bad it gets. But it's specifically because a lot of these refs just don't give a shit, and they could care less if guys get suspended or get in fights, and they'll just watch it or the penalties and they'll look away or anything else. But that's men's league. Like, this is the NHL. Yeah. Like, this is like the best league in the world on the biggest stage in the world. And it doesn't seem like the level of officiating is where it should be, which is just says everything you need to know about where the league is. But I don't know. I think the product's really good. The talent is as good as it's ever been. It's very entertaining. I love the TNT broadcast. I think the coverage surrounding the sport is really good. There's a lot of really good reporters, a lot of really good analysts, but if at its core you don't have the best officiating or you don't have guys that are capable of keeping a game in check, like what are we even watching?
Yeah, it was again. It'd be one thing like game 2, 7-2 loss. There were some questionable calls, but I mean, you got scored on 7 times. You only scored twice. Like 1-goal games. These have been 1-goal games.
Yep.
Like, I'm not in favor of what happened in, I think it was game 3. Literally, I think there were 5 or 6 penalties called in the first period alone. I can't recall there being that many penalties in a finals game ever. Ever. It was insanity. And then again, one with 11 seconds left in the third in a tie game, which could have sucked all the momentum away from Florida, because you and I both know what it's like to let in a goal that late in a period. Like, momentum shifts over the next period almost always.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Sucks the life out of you.
Like, could you imagine being a Florida fan? You know, that sounds kind of funny, but being a Panthers fan, you know, if you're a hardcore Panthers fan, you're Brooks Koepka out there, just all coked out, just hammered, and you lose game 3 because of that call.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Would have been catastrophic.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I'm with you.
That intentional?
What's that? Oh, catastrophic.
Catastrophic?
Yeah, it actually wasn't. No pun intended. It's just my vocabulary just shining through. But no, I mean, like, it's a fine line, right? Like, you don't want to get to a point where they're calling everything, because you do want to let them play like it is the playoffs. But if you go the other direction, on the other side of the spectrum, you don't call anything, or if it's way more in favor of one team,
like game 4.
Yeah, you gotta take a hard look at it and be like, what can we do to even this out? Because, like, obviously one team isn't being that much more disciplined. They're just getting away with stuff. Like, it's not that hard. And I say this sitting in a chair talking on a podcast. I've never been a ref before, but at the same time, like, these guys have done this for years, and they are the best the league has to offer. Like, there is a training process. There is a rigorous examination and testament to being a Stanley Cup final ref. They're allegedly the best refs in the league. So if that's the best you have, then you need to take a hard look at the training process to get there and the refs that you have in the league, because you got to think there are refs in Europe or elsewhere that aren't in the league that could do a better job than that. So I don't know. It's a slippery slope, and it's unfortunate that we even have to talk about it, because the refs should never be the story. Like, I say it in football all the time.
It's been a rough show.
Yeah, you get a feeling for a game sometimes when you're watching it, like, oh, like, this guy wants the game to be about him. Like, for whatever reason, these guys just get it in their head sometimes, and it's insane, because we should only talk about a ref if fans from either team are just saying yeah, no issues, the penalties that were called were deserved, they were obvious, and otherwise they just let us play. So it sucks, and I hope that's not the standard moving forward.
Do you think Tkachuk plays tomorrow?
I think he does. I mean, I think we all kind of know him as a psycho.
2 days off
at this point.
Yeah, I don't know how bad it's got to be the shoulder, right?
Yeah, but there could be mild concussion symptoms too. After that hit, and the fact that he wasn't able to skate, and he was like we said, like Bambi out there on the ice, or maybe someone else said that. But I don't think we've talked since. I think
it was Friedman mentioned right after, when he didn't come out for the next period. He goes, dealing out right now with a shoulder. He did mention shoulder. So I definitely think, because he didn't even attempt a shot.
But I would argue at this point that they're not going to mention the concussion, even if he had it.
No.
They'd be upper body, So that's the thing. If it's bad enough to the point where they think it would be detrimental to his future health, he's a young guy. He's the future of the organization, and at least partially the league. They're not going to put him in jeopardy, even though I think he would probably, if he were to decide for himself, of course he would go out there. The guy's insane, and he's a grinder. He's a player. He's not your typical superstar either, as we've discussed. He's way tougher than most superstars. Yeah. So if the doctor clears him, or they say yeah, he'll be fine, he's not going to do any more harm to himself, he's going to play. And I really hope he does, because if he doesn't, like we said, as long as Bob doesn't stand on his head, it's going to be tough for the Panthers to win.
Yeah. And I do think Bob is very capable of stealing them at least one game this series. I don't care. He
needs to.
He's a multi-Vezina trophy winner. I think he's won more than one, right?
Maybe one or two, either way.
Yeah, he's definitely won at least one. We know that. Maybe two, but he's definitely capable. And maybe that gets you to a full, as healthy as you can get Matthew Tkachuk. I think an 85% health-wise Matthew Tkachuk is still one of the better players in the NHL.
For sure. And if anything, he's a distraction that allows other guys to potentially step up and score a big goal, make a big play, make a big hit. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. But they need him at as much as he's able to give. And like you said, they need Bob to play the game of his life, or else I honestly think this is going to be 4-2, 5-2, Vegas wins, home ice. Jack Eichel lifts the cup, and we all cry.
Mm-hmm. So David Pagnotta of thefourthperiod.com mentioned or report. I'm going to pull up the tweet right now. Where is it? I apologize. Yep, Pagnotta. Tom Wilson is entering the final year of his contract extension to Cox with the Caps haven't started yet. And while the Caps want to remain a playoff contender, there is some teams curious if Washington would consider moving him. Allegedly, multiple teams have called in to check on Tom Wilson.
Yes.
I kind of said it jokingly. I tweeted it out jokingly. Huh?
Yes, to answer your question.
I know. But could you imagine, and it was a joke, but it's almost like a real thing because he was a little piece of shit last year. Tom Wilson on a line with Peyton Krebs and fill in the blank.
Tyson Jost. Or Tyson Jost or
fun would that be?
JJ Peterka or any winger. Is he a center or is he a winger?
I believe he's a winger.
Okay, so let's say Krebs centers him, or
you put him on into that right now,
or you put him on a line with Dylan Cousins.
Oh, one of the most feared lines in hockey.
This is what I'm saying. Like, you add him to your lineup, you automatically change the perception and the trajectory of your
right
team.
Winger.
Okay, so you could slot him in on any of lines 2 through 4. It's not going to be 4, so 2 or 3.
Yeah.
You slot him in anywhere. You put him on power play 2 right in front of the net. You move him around the lineup because teams need to prepare for him given the way he plays.
Yeah.
He's obviously not the most skilled guy in the world, but as we've discussed, that's not what the Sabres need.
You don't need that guy.
They need a grinder. They need an agitator. They need some jam. They need a guy to go in the corners, piss people off. He's a guy you hate to play against and love having on your team.
Yeah.
And every single Sabres fan in the world with any sense of what this team needs right now, if you put a poll out there, do you want the Sabres to sign Tom Wilson? If you got 2,000 votes, I would think that 98% would be yes.
And if they're not, they're crazy. They're absolutely crazy. Because
he would be the perfect fit. And anyone like him, it doesn't even need to be him, but that is the exact type of player they need.
We talk about a player that you hate playing against but love to have on your team. You think of guys like that. You think of guys like Brad Marchand. But the thing of it is Brad Marchand never backs up what he does. Tom Wilson does. Tom Wilson might not score you 80 to 90 points a season, but he'll give you 40 to 50, and he will literally put the fear of God into the opponent when he's out there. Yep. He makes them think twice. Do you think if Tom Wilson is on his hockey team, people are taking runs at Rasmus Dahlin or taking runs at Tage Thompson? Yeah. No way. No way.
Shot.
They're not.
No shot. He's the closest thing to like a fighter as there is in the game right now.
And don't get me wrong, when we say we need more grit, jam, or toughness, we're not talking about fighting. Fighting is as close to extinct as game as it's going to be.
The fact that there have been no fights in the NHL playoffs tells you all you need to know.
Yeah, but the difference is he brings fear.
Yeah,
he brings
intimidation,
fear, and
intimidation.
That is something this team needs.
He pisses people off. He's a distraction. Mm-hmm. He's everything you want on your team and everything that you don't want on the team that you're playing against. Yeah. And I can guarantee you that the Maple Leafs are going to be interested. He's from there.
He should be.
Yeah. I mean, he's the exact type of player. He's from there. It's his hometown. If we're able to make a better trade package, then obviously we'd be able to more so than the Maple Leafs. You do it because you don't want him in your division. If he's in your division and it makes the Maple Leafs that much better because similar to us, as I've talked about, we're very
they're going to have to lose one of the core 4 if they're going to bring in Tom Wilson.
But I think they would sacrifice that to get a player like him. This is what I'm saying. They need that type of guy just as much as we do, and they need a goalie just as much as we do, and they need the exact same things that we do. So if you're keeping pace with the Maple Leafs right now, which is a crazy thing to say given how good they've been and how bad we've been, but that's what it's going to be next season with the expectation that you want to make the playoffs. And if you're competing for the same type of guy, you need to go balls to the wall to figure out how to get him so that they don't. It's as simple as that.
Yep. And it's funny, and it's funny too, because this time last year, I was motherfucking Tom Wilson for that incident he had on I forget what you might remember what I'm talking about. Crouched with the guy from behind while he was like, I forget what it was, but even with all that and those very controversial things he does, he brings you so much.
I mean,
more
I've
to
called him a
hockey.
scumbag probably 25 times in my life.
Yeah,
Like,
who hasn't?
he's done some pretty questionable things, but in the interest of being a good teammate
Yep.
and a player that adds something that no one else could to your roster, he's that. And as much as you may not like, the people that would say no would be the people that like cannot fathom a player like that coming to the Sabres and him doing questionably scummy things on the ice.
Yep.
Scummy things happen on the ice all the time. It's hockey. It's going to happen. It's going to continue to happen throughout history. And it's really like, as we talked about with the ref, it really comes down to like what you can get away with and how deeply you can get under the other team's skin. And he walks that line as well as anybody.
He does. He does. Another thing too, Matthew Fairburn reported it yesterday amongst some other resources. Front of the program, Matthew Fairburn. The Sabres are also starting to come off a lot of teams no trade lists, which is awesome to hear.
I read that article 2 hours ago.
Yep. And
I had a big Grinch smile on my face up here because
like
the perception is changing.
And it's funny too, because I was sitting here searching for it while we were talking, and I typed into Twitter Sabres trade lists, comment, whatever words were used in that tweet to figure the first that popped up. First thing that popped up was from Andy Strickland from back in April when Patrick Berglund was on their podcast, the Cam and Strick podcast. Also front of the program, Cam Jansen. Patrick Berglund explains why his no trade list was never submitted, which led to his eventual trade to the Buffalo Sabres. The first team I would never want to go to. I'd rather quit playing hockey. That's literally what he said about the Buffalo Sabres.
Well, we've learned that Patrick Berglund isn't necessarily the standard of both hockey player and human being to use this type of thing for. So I'm going to consider him irrelevant in this discussion, but that has been a legitimate thing given the state of the organization since 2007. Like, it's essentially where players and careers go to die.
Yep.
Like,
and you were worried after everything with the Jack Eichel, the neck thing, like that players would look at this organization and feel like they're going to have their rights taken away from them if something like that were to happen to them. Like, but it is a breath of fresh air. While I did agree with Jack Eichel's stance on that whole thing.
Yeah, for sure. And you can agree with his stance on that entire matter about his body and his choice and his preferred surgery, and also know that he's a piece of shit.
Yeah, both things can be true.
Yeah,
and but like I was worried that was going to affect other players from outside the organization wanting to sign here or be traded here. Take the Sabres off or lift their no trade clause to come here. But it's a breath of fresh air to hear that on the floor at the Combine that was being talked about. So
I mean, honestly, like even what they're saying, like with Kevin Adams, how he deals with people, how humble and how communicate, like he's very good at communication. And I think he's got a lot of really good relationships with other GMs and agents and players across the league. Obviously, 12-year NHL vet, knows how to handle people. But when he entered that GM role after Botterill got fired and the Pegulas basically like hired a guy in the organization that's been there for a while with no GM experience, I think all of us were like, oh my God, here we go again.
Yep.
That was the initial thought. And
it was my thought.
But he's surrounded himself with incredibly smart people. I think the guy he brought over from Pittsburgh, Carmanos, assistant GM, a lot of experience in the league in a general manager's office. The analytics department, I think it was Sam Ventura and a couple of the other guys that he's hired. He's taken his own personal beliefs and, well, he obviously hands them, but he's obviously a lot of people disagree on analytics, but there is a value to them.
Oh, 100% there is.
Yeah, and
I've been a critic of analytics. I still am.
That's the thing, like it depends on how you view it and how you use it. But having a legitimate analytics department, which the Sabres did not have before this, is crucial. The best teams in the league have a very good analytics department, and they have it influence some of their decisions. They don't make the decisions, but it influences at least. It's another opinion. Like you go to a doctor for a second opinion, like Jack Eichel did. That's what the use of analytics are. He's completely revamped that department. And now, obviously, the relationship that he has with Don Granato, it's very similar to the relationship that Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott had with the Bills. Like they obviously, the two of them had a lot of experience coming in and they'd worked together for years. But what Adams has been able to build with Granato and the relationships they have with players and the reputation, the perception of the team, it's remarkable what they've done in 2 to 3 years. Like I don't think any one of us would have ever expected it, but it's amazing. And we're very, very fortunate that they've been able to do it.
Yep. I agree. And talking, like I said, it all started with talking about Tom Wilson. What would the cost be, do you think? Because I asked I asked earlier what, people would be willing to give up for Tom Wilson. And people were saying a second and a fifth. I'm like, that's not enough. I don't care if he's got 1 year left in his deal or not. That's
I personally would give 13. Just straight up.
I wouldn't disagree with you. Do I think that's too much in this draft? Yes.
I think, but maybe you get like a third or fourth round pick back. Like
I think
something like that. Maybe a pick swap.
Or maybe they trade up. We swap first round picks.
Exactly. Well,
and coming back to us is Tom Wilson.
But they have number 8 actually.
Do they?
Yeah, they do. They have it from a previous trade. So that would be difficult. But I think it's something at least worth discussing, right? Because we've talked about these first round picks and whoever it is, like we talked about Matthew Wood or a couple of the Russians, Simashev or Daniil Butt, or maybe one of the defensemen, Reinbacher or Palinka if he drops. None of these guys are going to play for the team in the next 2 to 3 years. And if you have the opportunity to get a guy on your roster that is significantly going to increase your chances of making the playoffs the next year, which we've discussed is a playoff or bust season, you need to make that trade. Like a first round pick is valuable, but this team has prospects out the wazoo. More developmental prospects and a pipeline better than any team in the league, and they probably will for the next 2 to 3 years. That's just the price we've paid for being bad for so long. So if you're a Sabres fan and you're unwilling to part with number 13 in the interest of getting Tom Wilson,
I'm definitely willing to part with
you have the wrong perception of where this team is at next season. We were 2 points away from making the playoffs, and the team that made it over us is currently in the Stanley Cup final. We were not that far off. And the only reason that we got there is because we finally got a goalie who we could trust in the past 2 weeks. And had we had him 10 games earlier, we would have been in the playoffs.
Yep. Another thing that came out today, too, is obviously Victor Olofsson is fully expecting a trade for himself to be traded this offseason, which I don't think is the most surprising thing in the world, seeing as in the games that mattered the most at the end of the season, he was a healthy scratch.
I think we'd all be very surprised if he wasn't on the team.
Lance Lyasowski's article at the Buffalo News today. Sources also told the Buffalo News the Sabres general manager Kevin Adams is very active in trade talks on multiple fronts. He has checked the market to gauge what it would cost to move up from the 13th pick in the draft and what he would acquire by moving back. But the sources declined to comment on whether Olofsson is part of those discussions. Listen, Vic, regardless of what the analytics say, Victor Olofsson has value. He's he's a multi-20 goal scorer.
In the right system, he could continue to do that.
And in a full 82 game season, he scores 35 goals this year.
You put him
easy
on the Avalanche or the Oilers or an offensive minded team where he doesn't have to play that much defense, that he can just sit on that right side and use, I would say, arguably his top 10 release in the league.
Yep.
Maybe not that high, but he's very good.
And listen, when Jack Eichel was on Spit and Chicklets 2 years ago now, his exact words were, this guy, when they're talking about Victor Olofsson, he said he was talking to his dad. He goes, this guy could score 40 with ease.
Yeah, no, I mean,
and that's true. He can.
We all have seen what he's not Ovechkin, but when he sets up on that right side and he gets an opportunity and you put him on a power play that has another threat so people can't get over to him. I mean, I personally think they should have done that all season with him and Tage, because who are you going to choose? Yeah, I think he's, as we said, he is value. And I don't know how much value that is. Maybe it's 4th round pick, but getting back anything for him at this point, I think would be valuable. So yeah, we'll see what happens there. And it's unfortunate because I think that like the Sabres just aren't the right situation for him. And I think he's done a service for the organization. He's been a fun player to watch, but he's not what they need right now. And it's just not going to work.
Olsen expressed his frustrations during end of season exit interviews. He never requested a trade according to sources, but he doesn't want to be put in a similar situation during the final season of his contract. Sitting Olsen was a risk ahead of an offseason when he could be moved because it might cause teams to think twice about acquiring the 2014 7th round draft pick. Hard to believe, dude. It was a 7th round pick with that type of. I guess it's not hard to believe. It is hard to believe.
I think everybody always knew what his capability was. He has the shot and he has it as good as anybody, but he doesn't play a complete game. But there are a lot of teams that would work on. It's just not ours.
Yep. And he had this surprised me. He had 21 even strength goals this season. 21.
He had like 5 empty net goals.
Yeah, but okay, but still that's surprising to me.
Yeah.
No, for a guy who was considered a power play specialist, he did
for sure.
I'm not advocating to keep him around. No, it's just.
I think his problem is that
it was a surprising goal total for me.
For sure. He also just got really hot. You remember that?
Yeah,
like he had a portion. I think
he had like 9 goals in 11 games.
February, March, maybe when we started to make that run. But before that, he didn't score for like 2 months. So
it's as streaky as you can get.
His consistency is a problem. He doesn't play a complete game. He's not tough. He's not the type of player we need. We have 7 of him. So it's just, it is what it is. But yeah, I hope they can get something back and move on and figure it out.
Mm-hmm. And just a few more quotes from Lance's article. The NHL draft's first round won't be held until June 28th in Nashville, and unrestricted free agency opens July 1st. General managers across the league are waiting for a more complete picture of the market before moving assets for a forward. Ottawa Senators winger Alex DeBrincat, an exceptional goal scorer and an RFA, is reportedly available on the trade market. Other forwards under contract who might be moved include Pierre-Luc Dubois. I think it's just a matter of time before he's moved. Mark Scheifele, Kevin Hayes, Taylor Hall. Never again. Anthony Mantha, Blake Wheeler, and Kevin LeBlanc. Some of the top UFA free agent forwards are Vlad Tarasenko, Tyler Bertuzzi, ROR, Patty Kane, JT Comfort, Alex Killorn, which I love Alex Killorn. You sign me up for him all day. And Michael Bunting. I would take Michael Bunting in a heartbeat as well. The Sabres challenge might be gaining leverage in negotiations. Other GMs are aware Buffalo has a crop of talented forwards with Kulik and Isaac Rosén in Rochester. The Sabres also might need the roster spot to re-sign veteran forwards Zemgus Girgensons and or Tyson Jost. 6 of the 7 defensemen under contract next season are waivers exempt, meaning they cannot be sent to Rochester without waivers. The exception is former number one overall pick Owen Power, whom Buffalo is trying to sign to a contract extension. Adams doesn't need the cap space, though. Olsen is well liked in the dressing room and possesses many of the character traits the Sabres covet. In theory, Adams could carry Olsen into the season as insurance in case of a prospect such as Kulik doesn't earn a roster spot in training camp, then move the pending UFA before the trade deadline. This unlikely scenario carries risk, particularly injury, and might lead to a lesser return. So, there's a lot of speculation going into the end of last season about Victor Olofsson. I think he's their biggest trade piece next to 13th overall. I don't see many guys on this roster right now that I would have on the trade block at all. Like actively be trading them. I'm not saying there's a small list of untouchables on this team, but there are guys that are tradable. I've said it in the past, but that is definitely your biggest trade trip next to 13th overall, or maybe one of your, is it 3 second-round picks or 2?
I think it's 2 this year.
Yeah, they got 2. But that for sure, a perennial 3-time 20-goal scorer. I think he had 30 this year, or close to 30 this year.
28, I think.
Yeah, 28. Would have had 30 per, if he played a full 82 for sure. But I mean, what does this roster look like to you next year? Look like next year, Hurls? Because I think that I've heard there's a lot of steam behind Adams is genuinely looking for a top 4 defenseman. I think you do see someone come in and finally find that partner for Owen Power. I don't think it'll be Ryan Johnson. What does this roster look like? Do you think Gergensons is officially gone? Do they bring back Tyson Jost? Like, if you were to predict next year's roster, what are you looking at?
So, I mean, we could just go line by line here, and I think it'll make it a little bit easier in terms of like what is going to be available. Because right now, I think we've seen it throughout the offseason. Like, there's not going to be that many spots. And it's because they are so well set up and they place an emphasis on guys that have been in the system, that know the system, and also their prospects. They want to give them opportunities to make the team. And why would they not? Draft and develop. That's the best thing you can possibly do as an organization. It sets you up for the future. So, of course, first line, Tage, Skinner, Tuck. That's set in stone, one of the best lines in the league next year. And that's the best thing that you can have, a dominant first line. Mm-hmm. And then I don't think any of us would be upset with Cousins, Peterka, and Quinn running it back. The kid line, which turns into now to the young adult line with their first full season together in the league. We all know that Quinn and Peterka made a massive step in the rookie year. And as we saw in the World Championships, I think both are going to take another huge step next year. So you've got your top 2 lines. If you really want to do it that way, that's completely fine. And then you've got 3 guys who you're pretty confident with, maybe in your middle 6, maybe on the 4th line, but Krebs, Middlestat, and Greenway. I think all 3 guys add a lot of value to the team, and they all have room to grow. We saw what Middlestat did at the end of the year. We saw the type of player that Krebs turned into. And I think we saw the tip of the iceberg of what Jordan Greenway can be with another season with Don Granato. I think
people were on his case pretty actively after the trade when he wasn't like contributing offensively after his first 5 games. But I mean, find me a player that, isn't like in upper echelon, top 50 player in the league. Obviously he doesn't rank anywhere near that, but find me those guys who are going to make that jump from one system to another and just immediately adapt and like not miss a beat. It's not easy.
No. And I think we discussed with Tom Wilson, like he offers you something that the team doesn't have. That physical presence, he's massive, but he can also score. Like he's proved in his career in the right situation, he can produce. And he eventually started to towards the end of the season. So I think he's got not a definite roster spot, but I think it's given them the fact that they parted with a 2nd-round pick for him. I think it's pretty safe to say he's going to be on the team next year. And then 4th line, Kyle Okposo, he's obviously locked in. He'll give us another grind it out, hopefully more production on the 4th line. I think his leadership is invaluable. He's on the team. And then those last 2 spots on the 4th line, obviously interchangeable with Krebs, potentially Greenway. It depends on who you sign. If it's Wilson or Bertuzzi or someone else, you can slot them in on the 3rd or the 2nd. But that basically leaves 2 spots. And we've talked a lot about Yuri Kulik. If he can come in and earn a roster spot, I think you give it to him. I think it's way less likely that it's Matthew Savoy, given not just how he played in the AHL playoffs, but also that he's a little bit younger. Not younger, but he's not shown as much. He's not shown as much as Yuri Kulik has. No. So that's another guy that they've drafted and developed, and he's turned into a bit of a diamond in the rough that is potentially going to be on your new Olofsson, essentially.
Yep.
So then Tyson Jost wants to be there. I'm not sure if Zemgus Girgensons wants to do it again, but if they give him if he agrees to a team-friendly deal, I don't think the Sabres would say no.
Well, I think that's the thing too. And somebody tweeted out is like, why just get rid of Girgensons when you're going to go out and look for another guy like Girgensons?
Exactly. Like he is tired and fatigued as all of my friends. Like if Zemgus Girgensons is on the team next year, like I'm going to be so upset. But damn well that he provides a role that no other guy on the team does. Like, like he does not scoring 10 goals, but like that's not what he's supposed to do. Like he forechecks, he back checks, he's a responsible defensive player, good on the penalty kill. Him and Okposo work well together. That 4th line of Girgensons, Tyson Jost, and Kyle Okposo, that's a good line. That is a good 4th line, and they're going to do the role that they need, that they're told to do. and you can slot them in there and not worry about it. But I personally don't think it'll look like that. I think it's one of the two between Justin Gergensons.
Yeah, I agree.
And then on defense, obviously you've got Dahlin and Power, you've got Samuelson and Lyubushkin, and then there's potentially one or two spots depending on Yoki Haru. I think there's absolutely going to be a new face somewhere in there.
You have to have a guy in your top four. You have to find Owen Power, that guy. You got to find him his version of Samuelson. You have to.
So it's going to be Dahlin and Samuelson, Power and X.
Imagine a much more offensively confident. Not Owen Power wasn't confident, but he couldn't afford to do the things offensively that Dahlin does with Samuelson. Imagine adding that to your repertoire next year.
Yeah, you got to have that guy. You got a stay-at-home guy that you can trust, good in front of his net, not a puck watcher, physical, responsible. It's the type of guy they need. And I honestly think they will have the ability to find that. So that would be great. And then in goal, obviously, I think we all expect Evan Levi to make the team and be one of the options. And I think we're all hoping for something along the lines of Connor Hellebuyck, UC Saros, Marc-Andre Fleury, Semyon Varlamov, some type of reliable veteran presence that can both help Levi develop, but also take some of his workload off of him. You don't want Levi being your 1A starter in his first full season in the NHL. Mm-hmm. As good as he was in those last 7 games, I don't think anyone wants that.
Are you comfortable with giving him 50 games next season?
Yeah, if he continues to perform the way that he has, 100%. But that's still 32 games you need from the other guy. So
and transition into that, Connor Hellebuyck. His name is again in the rumor mill because it's been reported that he doesn't wish to re-sign an extension with Winnipeg. That's one report floating around.
It's best case scenario. It really is. He plays for 1 year. He goes into UFA after that. It's approved.
What's it going to cost you to get him as a UFA though? That's the thing.
No. But I'm saying you trade for him now, and then you need him for a year, right?
For me, I'm not against Connor Hellebuyck.
I would
really not.
I would love him for 1 year and no more.
But that's the thing. What's going to cost you to get him for 1 year?
Well, I mean, what's going to cost you to trade for him anyway? He's a UFA after this year.
Here's my thing. If I'm going to get Connor Hellebuyck, it's not just to make playoffs.
I mean, given what Devin Levi has shown us already,
you can break the playoff drought with Devin Levi and UPL next year.
I don't think you can. I don't.
100%. So
I only say that from UPL's perspective.
Yes. If you're making that deal, you want to be a contender next season.
Yeah, no,
that's what that is for me.
No,
it's not to break the playoff drought. It's
no, you're expecting to win the Atlantic Division.
Yes, but that's the thing. That can't be the only move you also make.
No. I think it's congruent with potentially, like you said, Blake Wheeler's UFA, right?
I believe so. Yes,
but I think that's what I'm saying. Like, they need another goalie. They need a defenseman. I want one of each. I want a guy for your middle six. I want a guy for your top 4, and I want a 1A to 1B for Levi. Mm-hmm. You do those 3 things, you put this team in a position that they haven't been since 2007.
Agreed. I'm looking at that UFA list I just gave. Of course, now it's trying to make me subscribe to the news. Okay. But there's, I think Blake Wheeler was on there. I want to say, who was the other guy from Winnipeg? There's Blake. I don't know if Blake Wheeler was on there. It's another Scheifele. Is it
Scheifele? Yeah.
I think Scheifele signed an extension though, didn't he?
I've heard Scheifele in trade talks, but that's
okay. Well, anyways, there's UFAs to be had, and then defensively, we all know, Gudas is going to be he's near the top of my list for me.
God, I would
Radko Gudas.
I would adore that beard on.
Some people say he's nothing more than a third pairing. Well, he's still better than what our third pair. You know what I mean? Like,
and he brings the exact type of physical presence
which we don't have.
That we need. Yeah.
Dahlin has some jam and some grit to him, but that's not the guy you want out there being that guy. You don't want him being that guy.
I mean, Lyubushkin's good, but he's a third pairing guy.
Yeah. again, I just I don't know. I don't want my star Swedish defenseman being that guy.
No, and he's not.
That's just me.
He's not going to be. And if we're saying this, I think Kevin Adams knows it.
Yeah.
And he knows the type of guy that he needs to get. And it's going to be exciting when he does it, because like we've seen the trades that he's made thus far and the signings that, well, less so the UFA signings because he hasn't really had an opportunity. But it's going to be really exciting. The type of guy that is not only going to be available, but interested in playing for the team. Like, because like we said, like the perception of the Sabres is completely changing. Like the fact that Alex Tuck came over and Peyton Krebs came over and Tage Thompson is blossoming and Dylan Cousins and everyone's signing team-friendly deals and the vibes are off the charts. Like this team is in a better position to acquire those types of guys in each realm, forward, defense, and goalie. Like they can get a blue chip guy at each position.
So here are the notable names, the UFAs. Patty Kane, Jonathan Toews, whose future is very uncertain. Ryan O'Reilly, Vlad Tarasenko, James Van Riemsdyk, John Klingberg, Max Pacioretty, Sean Monahan, Milan Lucic, Matthew Dumba, Jordan Stahl, Eric Johnson, Johnny Quick, Jason Zucker, who I would love a guy like Jason Zucker.
Zucker would be great.
Gustav Nyquist, Jonathan Drouin, Patrick Hornquist, Dmitry Orlov, Semyon Varlamov. See, if I'm going to go get a goalie, I wouldn't mind Varley. I like Evgeny Dadonov, Patrice Bergeron is probably going to retire. Ben Bishop, which is already ours, but we all know that we don't deal with that. Is Tyler Bertuzzi? That's a pipe dream for sure. Thomas Tatar, Frederick Anderson, Shane Gostisbehere, Alex Killorn. Again, I mentioned my desire for him. Oscar Klefbom. I don't hate that idea. Jonathan Bernier, Brian Dumoulin, another veteran defenseman. Is he a right? He's a left-handed shot though. Oscar Klefbom. Yeah, of course, he's a left-handed defenseman. Kevin Shattenkirk, who's a little bit long in the tooth, but he's a right-handed defenseman. Jonas Dusky, Nick Foligno, Cam Talbot.
Ooh, I would love to bring Nicky Foligno home.
Yeah, me too. Or trade for Marcus. Get the whole family back.
Bring them both. That would be
right.
So sick.
JT Comfort, Lars Eller, other notable names. Ryan Graves, who I'd be very interested in, even though he's a left-handed shot, still good defenseman.
Severson was someone we talked about, and now he's on the Blue Jackets.
Yep, it's true. Max Domi, a guy who's been not a suitcase, but he's seen a little bit of the league. Carson Soucy, another left-handed shot defenseman. Oscar Sundqvist, center. Radko Gudas, again, he's near the top of my list. Nemistikov. Dude, this fucking list goes on and on and on.
There's a bunch, but
there's a lot. Evan Rodriguez, of course. I'm sure
the names that you said that you're like, oh, I'd love him, and interested in. They're the types of guys we've talked about though, like Radko Gudas, Jason Zucker, Alex Killorn, Tyler Bertuzzi. They're the type of guy the Sabres don't currently have a lot of. That very tough, imposing physical presence that can put fear and intimidation into teams. Obviously, Tom Wilson, but they're all cut from the same cloth. They're all in the same vein of the type of player that we all discuss. Mauricio mentioned many times during these comments after the games that we lost.
He's been MIA since the season.
That's what I'm saying. They need toughness, though. They need a brand of hockey that they don't currently play. So I think, like I said, if we're saying it, Kevin Adams is obviously thinking it, and he's going to have his pick of the litter. And thankfully, it could happen in trade, UFA, RFA offer sheet. Who knows?
Yeah.
I just think he knows that he needs to add 2 or 3 guys to put this team in true contention. What we talked about happening at the deadline, it obviously needs to happen now. And that's what's so exciting about this, because it's going to. And it's really, really encouraging.
So, this was something like a fun little exercise. I try it on Twitter. We'll do it here before we end the show. Build your Sabres roster for next season. Can only make one trade. Can only make 2 free. You have to do these things. You have to make one trade. You have to make 2 free agent signings. You have to offer sheet 1 RFA. And you can only start the season with 1 rookie. And it doesn't matter where that rookie plays. So I think we all know who that's going to be. But for this exercise, I'll exclude Devin Levi.
Okay.
I'll
Yeah,
exclude Devin Levi.
That doesn't count.
It doesn't count. And you cannot acquire a former Sabre.
Okay.
No.
So
obviously the standard of the cap.
So the trade, in my opinion, I'm choosing in between Hellebuck and Tom Wilson. I'm going to go Tom Wilson.
Okay.
Just because, as we discussed, for all the reasons we discussed, I think he adds a little bit more of what the Sabres absolutely need right now. Mm-hmm. That's the trade. Can you run me a brief list of the RFAs again?
Actually, I already have them pulled up for you because I knew you were going to ask. So RFAs: Alexander DeBrincat, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Timo Meier, Jesper Bratt, Vince Dunn, Alexis Lafreniere, which is hilarious, Bowen Byram, Jesse Puljujärvi, Dennis Gurnoff, Mackenzie Blackwood, Alex Turcotte, Ethan Bear, Maxime Comtos, Yegor Shargunovich, Tyson Jost, Ilya Samsonov, Grigory Denisenko, Ian Mitchell, Jamie Drysdale, Anton Lundell, and I mean, you got Trevor Zegras in there, Anders Bjork, Alex Newhook, Oliver Wahlstrom.
So I'm not hearing too many defensemen.
No, there are plenty of defensemen. I'll go through the defensemen. Ty Smith from Pittsburgh, Cameron York from Philly, Andre Miller from the Rangers, Ryan Merkley from Colorado, Jacob Bernard Docker, and these are getting a little more down on the list.
So it's a bit. I mean, it's a bit of a pipe dream, but if you can make it work because you probably have the money, Keandre Miller.
That would have to be. Is that your offer sheet?
Well, that's what he's one of the RFAs, right?
Yes.
I mean, yeah.
So your offer sheet and Keandre Miller.
Yeah.
See, mine and your list are very similar.
I think you look at that list of this is what I'm saying. Like, if you make the trade for Tom Wilson, I think you're set from a forward perspective because you add Tom Wilson and Yuri Kulik to your forward lineup, and then you're set. Like we said, there's only one or two spots. So you add those two, you're good from a forward perspective. RFA, so that means it's got to be a goalie or a defenseman. You're not going to offer sheet a goalie. So let's offer sheet the best defenseman to a team that cannot afford to re-sign him.
Nope.
So the Rangers are obviously in cap hell. You tell Chris Drury, F you for what you did in 2007 and make him an offer that they can't match. Yep. And also they'll get 4 first-round picks after or whatever it is. Like that would be good for the Rangers. Like at this point, they shouldn't be rebuilding, but at the same time, like all they have is Shesterkin and Artemi Panarin and whoever else. Like I don't Chris Kreider obviously and Zibanejad, and they've got some good players in Adam Fox, but like the Rangers need to do something.
They need a RFA now.
And even if they lose Keandre Miller, their defense is still in pretty good shape.
So he's still with them through next season, but he'll be an RFA. Or is he an RFA starting? It says 2003-2024 RFA status. So so he's an RFA. They have to figure that out.
Yeah. So you offer a sheet the hell out of Keandre Miller.
So he signed a 3-year, obviously his entry-level deal standard, 3 years for 3.8. I mean, what do you pay Keandre Miller?
I think he's in the 7 range, 6-7, right? He's not Owen Power. He's not Rasmus Dahlin, but I would say he's in the upper echelon of
Imagine your top 4 defensemen are Matthias Samuelsson, Rasmus Dahlin, Owen Power, and Keandre Miller.
Fucking murderer's row. Like that is as good of a top 4.
And you have Tage Thompson at 7.1 or 7.2. Dylan Cousins at 7.1.
No, it's as good of a top 4.
It's you have these guys still on entry level deals,
and also he's young. He's physical. He can score if you need to. It's the perfect option. Yeah. And then what were the other 2 parameters?
You have to make 2 free agent signings. They cannot be former Sabres.
So at that point,
one rookie.
At that point, I think. Given the amount of money that you're going to spend on Keandre Miller and Tom Wilson, Tom Wilson not yet, but I mean, hopefully you'd re-sign him. I think at that point you go for a low-cost goalie. You go for someone like Varlamov. You go for a veteran presence in net who can give you 30, 40 games if need be. Hopefully not. Hopefully Levi continues to improve as he's shown at every single level, and he plays the way he did in the last 7 games of the season in his first 7 NHL games. Aside from the Red Wings game, he had 6 really solid starts. And I would say even that Red Wings game wasn't as bad as people made it out to be. So, you sign Semyon Varlamov, and then maybe you sign another forward on a low-cost deal. Like if you can get Jason Zucker, you get Alex Killorn, then you make some competition for spots. You make it so that you might not need Yuri Kulik, or you keep him as the 13th forward and rotate him in or bring him up at some point. Like if they don't have to start him in the NHL next year, I think that's a good thing, right? Like if you are savvy enough with your cap and your signings and your trades and your offer sheets to the point where you don't have to throw a 19-year-old forward into the NHL, I think that's a positive. More development, more time.
Are you going Rusek then?
I mean, I think he's more ready for the NHL at this point, right?
I think so.
Yeah, like you keep him as the 13th guy, and then you bring up Kulik if he continues to light the AHL on fire. I just think that, like you make a big splash in a trade for someone like Wilson. He's probably not going to happen because NHL GMs don't do offer sheets anymore. But if you offer sheet a guy, it's Keandre Miller, and then you sign another forward and you sign a goalie, and then you're humming.
What are the rules on offer sheets depending on how much you sign them for?
Well, I think it depends on the like for instance, like remember when Edmonton did it to Vanek back in the day? It was like a 7-year.
Changed a little bit since then.
Yeah, it was like a 7-year, $52 million deal, and had we let them sign it or not matched it, we would have gotten I think 4 first-round picks or something.
Okay.
And the compensation might be different these day and age. It might be a first, a second, or something else. I would have to look it up. But it's something significant because obviously, like, you're doing something that doesn't happen that often. In my opinion, like me and my friends talk about it all the time. Like every NHL GM should do an offer sheet every single year, multiple offer sheets, because like, what's the point? Like, if you think you can pay that guy that amount of money and he can add that to your team, why wouldn't you do it? But there's like an unwritten rule that it just doesn't happen.
So this is good. So it isn't going to cost you as much as you think.
Great.
Keandre Miller.
Great.
So according to Cap Friendly, I'm going to send you the link right now. You can take a look at it. But according to Cap Friendly, to sign a player, and you can tell me if I'm wrong when I'm reading into this. Like I said, I just sent it to you. Between 6.4 and 8.5, it costs a first, a second, and a third.
Done. We don't need draft picks. We don't need any more draft picks. I'm over draft picks.
I love it.
Draft picks in the NHL are not what they are in the NFL. Your first, second round guys are not going to play on the team and start next season. They're not Dalton Kincaid. They're not Kyer Elam, who might not even start this season. Like, they are developmental prospects, anything past the top 5 that might be on your team in 2 to 3 years.
Well, I mean, I don't know what that would do to us when it came to guys like JJ Paterka and Jack Quinn when their contracts are up. But if you could have your top 4 defensemen, I mean, Dahlin's $10 million a year. I think if you can get Owen Power at 8, that's huge.
Yeah, massive.
Just throw in
or he might take a bridge deal like Dahlin did.
Or you get just say Keandre Miller comes in at 7. And then you have Samuelson at, what is he making, 4? I think it's like
no,
a little bit less than 4.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So what is that? 10?
He's 7 years though, I think. But yeah.
Yeah, 10. Yeah, Samuelson's locked up to 2030. So you'd have Samuelson. I'm pulling up his contract right now.
It's 10 plus 8 plus 7, which is 25. And then if Samuelson's under 4 or under 5, that's your top 4 defensemen under $30 million a year.
Yeah.
And then you have your top 2 centers under $14 million a year because of the amazing contracts of Tage Thompson and Dylan Cousins. And the salary cap is going up in the next 2 years as well. So you're setting.
So he's making 4.285
Okay.
a year. So, but yeah, I'm pretty sure. Let's just double check that. His cap hit for till 2030, which is possibly one of the. For me, that's an insane contract for.
Yeah, I mean,
I can't believe he signed it. To be honest,
he bet on himself though.
Yeah.
He knows what type of player he is, and as a stay-at-home defensive defenseman like that, he's not going to get that much more.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not. Who knows? But you'd have him at 4.2. That's Dahlin at 10. That's 14.2 tied up in your top 2 defensemen. Not too shabby, especially a defenseman who can score 90 points a season, 90 or more. We'll just say that. Leave it at that. Owen Power will say he comes in. We'll be fair. 8. It'll probably be closer to 9.
Yeah,
8 and 9.
Yeah. It really depends on what he thinks about.
I know Kevin Adams wants long term. He wants term, which I don't disagree.
Yeah, for sure.
So you got
like it could be a bridge deal.
So we'll say 23 million between those 3 defensemen in your cap, between those 3 guys, and then you add in say Keandre Miller at 7. We'll say 7. We'll be generous. 7.
Yeah.
$30 million for your top 4 defensemen.
It's pretty good.
Are you doing well for yourself there?
I would say so, especially given who the 4 defensemen are. And then you have Lyubushkin and Jokiharju on your 3rd pair. And that's obviously not ideal, but it's not horrible.
Or you still have Sillinger signed for another year too.
Or Stillman.
Or Stillman, sorry.
Yeah. So and obviously Bryson's probably gone and a few of the other guys, and who knows what's going to happen with Brian Johnson.
30. So that's $30 million. You have Tage at 7.2. Dylan at another 7. So we'll say 14 and a half. We'll just say 14 and a half. So that's 44 and a half between those players. So that's 6 guys, 40. That's almost half your cap right now.
Yeah. But the cap is increasing.
Skinner at 9 million.
Yeah.
That's 53. Ironically enough, 53 million. I mean, Alex Tuck, I think he makes 5.
Yeah.
58. Who else are you paying with that remaining cap?
I mean, this is
Kevin Levi's an entry level.
It's way down the line, obviously, but
you
got Quinn and Peterka, and then obviously Levi, but you don't need to worry about that right now.
No,
but we're just talking about next season and the year after. And Fairburn did an article recently talking about this exact situation, like what the Sabres roster is going to look like in 2025 and how they're going to get under the cap. But Kevin Adams and his team around him seem very, very intelligent with how they're planning this out. Tage Thompson is going to be the best contract in the league for the next 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even going to be close. And same with Dylan Cousins. He's going to be a deal as well. So they've been really intelligent about it. And it's refreshing because we've overpaid guys, fucking Billy Leno and all these other guys in the past. We've needed to overpay to bring guys here. Whereas now we're drafting and developing and these guys want to stay here. So they're taking bargains. That is the difference. That is how you build organizational continuity and you keep guys around and you change the perception of the entire team.
Billy Leno. What was the worst decision, Ralph Kruger or Billy Leno?
I mean, probably Kruger, but we've had so many coaches at this point that it doesn't even matter.
Kruger lost 18 straight, and
it started out I thought he was good, especially coming after Phil Housley.
He was a snake charmer, buddy. He was a snake charmer. He had the gift of gab.
Phil Housley.
You talk like we have a paper bag.
I honestly think Phil Housley was somehow worse.
No way.
Phil Housley was
at least Dahlin thrived a little bit under Housley.
Yeah, but he was a bad coach, man. Huh? He was a bad coach.
Housley?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think he was ready to be a head coach in the NHL. I think he got there on name value alone.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think Kruger was much worse.
I mean, obviously his system was horrible.
Yeah, it didn't work with the strengths of his players. Whereas at least under Housley, Dahlin at least flourished a little his rookie season.
Yeah. that.
In terms of mine, I'm very similar to you. I'm offer sheeting Keandre Miller all day.
I think you have to do it.
Yeah, and that
Make them sign it. Make them sign it, but they're a team that cannot sign it. You offer him 7 years, $50 million. The Rangers aren't matching that.
Mm-hmm.
They're not doing it. They can't. They cannot match it. Or even like sweeten it up a little bit. 7 years, 55. Throw an extra $5 million in there. Why not? We've got the money.
Trade for Tom Wilson and hope that he loves the culture so much he wants to sign a team-friendly extension. In terms of my UFA signings, Alex Killorn, I think he'd fit in very well. And looking at it right now, I'm just trying to find. I guess I want to find Granado-friendly guys that Granado would thrive. You know, he's a USN TDP guy. You know what? He'd be cheap. He'd be really cheap. It wouldn't cost you a lot. Bring back Ryan O'Reilly.
Why not? Why fucking not?
Bring back Ryan O'Reilly.
Yeah, I'd be very, very fine with that. I think, like I said, any type of player that can go in front of the net, get into the corners, bring a physical type of presence, give you something that you don't currently have.
I was looking at Jason's. Actually, how about this? I would say if he's willing to do a 3-year deal, because that would match up with your free agencies, I would say Jason Zucker. It's between Jason Zucker and it's between Ryan O'Reilly. But I would not be against Ryan O'Reilly coming back to Buffalo to be your third or even fourth line center. But I think he'd slot in well as your third line center.
Yeah, he would definitely be a third liner. Yeah, that would be incredible. It'd be a really good story because, like we said, I don't think he had an issue with Buffalo. I think he just was at a tough place in his career, and obviously it was a bad situation with everything going on. I think he would love the new culture. He would love to be an older guy in the locker room, a veteran presence. He had obviously Noah Poso still. Darlene, I think he was there at least for a little bit.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, so he would know. He would Skinner. Obviously, he'd be familiar with a few of the guys, and I think they would welcome him back because he seems like a really good dude. Yeah. So yeah, that'd be amazing. I would welcome that with open arms.
Yep. And then in terms of my rookie, I think it'd be Rusek as well. I think he's more NHL polished. However, obviously the ceiling is so much higher for Yuri Kulik.
But like he's also a guy that physical presence can go in the corners. Like he'll score you some goals here and there, but he's going to be a defensively responsible player.
Yeah. So that and obviously, you know, in terms of who's in net for me, it's Devin Levi. And then I am fully willing to go into next season with Levi and UPL.
I'm way less confident in that than you are. But that's just because
if that's what your team in a perfect world, that's your team's looking like, yeah, I'm all perfectly fine with it. You know, you have a team that's able to score at will as much as they were last season.
For sure.
And now you can defend and you can stop a puck.
Yeah. I think you need a little bit more of a veteran presence. I really do. Obviously, UPL first NHL season last year, he was up and down, gave you some good games. But I think you need a guy like we had in Craig Anderson this year to give you that stability, to give you that experience. Like
you talked about a lot. Would you be willing to trade for Marc-Andre Fleury?
100%. Absolutely. But this is what I'm saying, though. Like, I think you need that type of presence to go with Levi.
I agree.
I don't think you can do
need Connor Hellebuyck. I just don't. I would love it, but I don't need him.
I mean, UC Saros. Like, anyone like that, though. I just want someone, like, of course, like, a bona fide starter is a luxury at this point.
Yeah.
Given what we already have. But at the same time, like, your goal is to make the playoffs next year.
Yep.
And the best way for you to make the playoffs is to be confident in your goaltending situation because you know you're going to score goals.
And your UFA goalie list isn't the greatest.
Not the greatest. Varlamov would be fine, but you're also banking on Levi not having a dip, which, as good as he is and is mentally
they're always going to
stable
struggle
and confident, like it happens to every goalie.
I would say my top 3 goalies on this list would be Varley, Freddie Anderson, and
Tristan Jerry for me.
Korpisalo.
And that too, yeah. Any one of those guys, you can trust those guys. They're proven NHL goalies. So
you can rely on them to play 30 games a year, and
because they've done it. They've done it for 5 plus.
They can win you 20
They've
out of
done
30,
it for 5 plus and even 10 plus years in some cases. So yeah, that would be great. So we'll see what happens.
But if I'm all talked out.
I'm good.
You're good.
Yeah,
I got any final thoughts?
No, other than be rooting hard for Florida. We'll obviously recap it no matter what happens. Hopefully Bob finds something that he had in the first 3 rounds. Hopefully Kachuk can give you something. Guys need to step up. Sam Reinhart, give us a goal. Brandon Montour, play as well as you've played. The Panthers are Buffalo South right now. We need you, man. We need you. As much as you could possibly prevent Vegas from winning on their home ice and Jack Eichel raising the Stanley Cup and potentially winning the Conn Smythe Trophy.
Yep.
Please do anything. Anything. Please.
Make this a series. Make this a series. Drag it out.
Get it back to Florida.
Yep.
Win on your home ice. Anything can happen in Game 7. That's all I got to say.
I have a stand-up. It's from Body Armor. It's like when Jack was like his second season. I have it. I was going to toss it out, but I was just trying to figure out if I could do anything to it in terms of content or something that's funny.
Light it on fire. I don't know.
I was thinking about it.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it. Maybe tomorrow before I leave for my I'm going to be at a work dinner
honestly,
during the game.
If worst case scenario happens, it's just something that we're going to have to accept. And then we can hide away until the Sabres trade for Tom Wilson.
Exactly. My final thoughts, not hockey related. Josh Allen on the cover of Madden.
So sick.
Right?
Funny little story. The LA Bills backers, at least I think 10 to 15 of them were called to a casting call out here. And they didn't know what it was for, but they heard
Madden cover?
A shoot for Bills fans. And they show up at a studio. And they're all dressed up. They didn't realize what it was for. They just thought it was like an NFL commercial. And then Josh Allen walks in. And they are told at that point that it's for the cover of Madden. And they all allegedly just lost their shit.
Dude, I'd fucking
and then you saw the cover. It's a bunch of people that go to our bar and other bars in the surrounding area. So
is this a well-known story?
Yeah. Matthew Fairburn.
This is the first time I heard it.
Not Fairburn. Matt Perino. Tweeted it out when Josh was doing the EA Madden event in Buffalo last week. He talked about it, and Josh was just like, yeah, they didn't know, and they were some of the best fans I've ever met. And I can tell you that personally, that our bar that we go to out here is incredible. Busby's West in Santa Monica, also Baja Sharkies in Hermosa Beach. Some of the best Bills fans in the world live out in LA, and it was really, really cool to see. So yeah, that was a nice little treat.
Yeah. I also, last night in my men's league game, we were playing a team that didn't belong in our division. It was just in the weekend A, we only have like 8 total teams. So they'll throw a few weekend B teams in there just to make it so you're not playing the same teams every other week. And for whatever reason, at the end of the game, this kid gets a breakaway. And it was so bored. I was so kind of bored there. And I for no reason whatsoever, I do a 2-pad. I attempt a 2-pad jammer save. For no reason at all, like just none whatsoever. And I go paddle down, just throw my legs up in the air, kind of like almost like a wheelbarrow pad, stacking the pad save. And I have my my paddle tilted, hits the paddle, goes right up over me, just goes right into the net. Just looked like a complete asshole.
Reminds me of a time we were up 3-0 at the end of the first, and someone chipped it in at the end of the period, and I thought the time was going to run out, and I tried to baseball swing it with one hand, and it deflected off and off the crossbar and into the net. And I look at the ref, and he's just like, my team hated me. we ended up winning like 8-2, but they look at me, they were like, you fucking asshole. So yeah, I'm never going to do that again.
But anyways, Hurls, it's always a pleasure. This has been episode 127 of Two Goalies, One Mic. Game 5 tomorrow night. Panthers look to stave off elimination and avoid elimination in the Stanley Cup Finals. And keep their Stanley Cup dreams alive. Remember, this is brought to you by Outlet Liquor, the place to buy a case over on George Urban Boulevard for all your Sabres needs next season, Bills needs next season, or Stanley Cup Finals needs. Get over to Outlet Liquor. Don't forget the Bandits celebration tomorrow. Let's go Bandits.
The box.
Obviously, Buffalo Faithful knows that the Bandits won the National Lacrosse League championship a week ago.
The curse is broken.
Curse is broken, right? Their second, their first since I think like 05 or something like that, maybe 08. It's been a long time since they've won it.
First of 3 Buffalo championships in the next calendar year.
Yep, there we go. Just the cycle. Just run the cycle.
Speak it into existence.
Could you imagine how drunk this city would be?
Don't
How
even want.
drunk this city would be.
I would move home.
You would move home. You're coming home for the parades.
I would finagle a way to. Yeah, I'd figure something.
Would you quit your job?
No, I wouldn't do that. But I would try to finagle a situation to come home. But yeah, I would be at both parades, obviously.
Yeah. That's the way I want us to meet for the first time in real life at a parade.
Yeah, at a Bills Super Bowl parade.
That's the way I want it to happen.
Yeah.
Me and Hurls have never actually met in real life. I slid into his DMs.
It's the beauty of technology.
Yeah. So, Hurls, thanks for hopping on, guys. I'll hang up and listen. You enjoy the rest of your night, and we will talk to you later.